Good morning. Barry Bryson here. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. We're continuing our study of the prophet Amos, and last time we finished that second section of judgment, where there were these oracles, each of which began, "Hear this word which the Lord has spoken." And now we're coming to the next to last section, in which the prophet is going to be given 5 visions. And the first 4 of these visions are introduced by the prophet, saying, "The Lord God showed me, and behold." So he's given the visions, and these are visions of judgment, particularly the first 4, um, and um, um, and the first 2 are very brief, and he pleads for God to relent in his judgment, and God agrees in the first 2. But then the third, that's not going to happen. Well, I owe you some time since last time, because I did more than 10 minutes last time in these 5 good minutes, which I've been encouraged to rename some good minutes, but I'm stubborn. Anyway, we're going to look at each one of these individually, and the first 2 are very short, so I may give you some time back in the next days. So the first of these images of judgment is a locust plague, which is famously a symbol of judgment throughout the prophets. In fact, the book of Joel is about a locust plague, and the locust plague itself is called the Day of the Lord, and I'm sure it's about an actual locust plague. Joel, heavens, that's just a wonderful read just for the description of the locust plague. It's almost surrealistic in the way it's described. It's amazing, but that's a different study. So we're in chapter 7, verse 1. Thus the Lord God showed me, and behold, he was forming a locust swarm when the spring crop began to sprout. And behold, the spring crop was after the king's mowing. And it came about when it had finished eating the vegetation of the land that I said, Yahweh God, please pardon. How can Jacob stand, for he is small? And the Lord Yahweh changed his mind about this. It shall not be, said the Lord. Um, these passages are they kind of remind me of the first 3 images: the locust plague, the sheep, and the plumb line. They kind of remind me of God in Genesis 18 coming to meet with Abraham to tell him 2 things. One is, you're going to have a baby boy next year, and the second is, I'm going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And 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 Abraham pleads with God, if you can only find, 50 righteous souls, or what, how about just 10? And God says, I'll relent if I can find this. I'll relent if I can find 10. Of course, he doesn't find 10, and God knows he's not going to find 10. But it's a chance for God to communicate to the prophet the necessity of his judgment. And we're going to have that with these first 3 images. First is the plague of locusts. We've talked about how important locust plague is as a symbol of God's judgment. God is forming the locust plague. It's almost like, in his hands, he's forming it, and he's ready to cast a locust plague. And it came about after the spring crop, when the spring crop began to sprout after the king's mowing. There would have been an October-ish planting, and then the king's mowing would have been the which is not reported anywhere else in the Bible, but what it would have been was tax. The king would have required a certain amount of your harvest. Samuel said that all the way back in First Samuel. If you get a king, this is what's going to happen. He's going to take some of your harvest all the time, and this is what's happening. So evidently, perhaps that October planting, um, or when that was harvested, the king either took that or part of that as taxation. So after that, this is all for us now, this food that we're raising for us, and it's sprouted up and it's green and it's good, and God sends the locust to eat it all up. And he pleads, don't destroy them. Jacob is small. They may think they're big time, but they're not, and they can't handle this. And like God does in Hosea 11, he relents. I'm not going to bring my strong judgment. So God relents. And that's what he does this time. He's going to do it one more time before he shows the prophet that relenting is not going to accomplish anything. We'll pick up with the devouring sheep, fire devouring the sheep. The sheep don't devour anything next time. Thank you so much for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.